Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 170. Yes, we've made it to our 170th episode without being struck off air, without any of our podcasts going missing. We are still going. This was the podcast that I was only ever meant to do 10 episodes for 4 years ago. And now we're at episode 170 4 years later. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in each week, not to listen to me, but to listen to our guests who always have, I can assure you, a fascinating story to share with us. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, which is the other platform you can watch these podcasts. If you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page, so you can keep updated about what we're doing. As you know, as great as this podcast is, we do other things. We do book distribution, school visits, Hare Krishna festivals, all those things that keep me out on. Well, what's that saying? If you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. It's always good to be engaged in Krishna service, of course. Okay, episode 170. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back. We have a return guest. Delighted to welcome back. Shravaniya is our guest. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
It's spring. No worries at all. It's great to have you back with us. And this is kind of another historic because I think you'll be only the 5th person in history to appear on this podcast twice. I had to go back through the archives to look up when you last appeared. It was on the 1st of December, 2023. That was episode 95. And 75, yes, okay, 75 episodes later, you have returned, which is wonderful. And I always really love and appreciate talking to Shravaniya. She always has fascinating stories to share, information, really useful information to share with people. So Shravaniya, it's a bit of a recap because our audience is a lot bigger than a year and a half ago. Let's start with the first question. Please tell us a bit about where you're from and how you first encountered the teachings of Srila Prabhupada.
Okay. Well, I was born in this life in Midwestern USA. I grew up in Ferguson, Missouri, North County, St. Louis, and I was raised Catholic. My mom told me when I was 12 years old, learn how to type and you'll always be able to find a job. She was right. I began working part-time since I was 14 years old, beginning at the Department of Motor Vehicles. I graduated from McClure Senior High School in 1970. Can you hear everything okay?
Yeah. You sound fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. One of my classmates was Michael McDonald, that famous singer who performed with Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers. He was my classmate. After graduation, I worked at a civil service job for 6 months, but I was always interested in metaphysics and the mysteries of life. Psychology was not enough for me. Nor was I interested in Hinduism. I didn't know anything, but wasn't interested. I wanted to understand consciousness and reality. That's what I wanted to understand. I'd been reading Be Here Now by Ram Dass and Swami Vishnu Devananda's complete illustrated book of yoga. By the way, I got my yoga teacher certification from Swami Vishnu Devananda in person in the Bahamas 22 years later, after learning my first asanas from his book. So that was a dream come true. That was great. I also checked out the Yoga Sutras of I.K. Taimni from the Eastern Philosophy section of the Ferguson County Library. I wanted to find my guru. Well, actually, he found me. Here's the story. My first meeting with His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, was through one of his books. I told my brother, Bob, I'm interested in yoga. And he said, oh, I got a book. It's called Krishna Consciousness, the Topmost Yoga System. He was at the St. Louis Art Museum in Forest Park. Most likely it was a Hare Krishna devotee on book distribution. So the book was in his drawer with his socks and his underwear. So I rummaged through and took it out, and I read it cover to cover. I didn't understand everything I read, but I could not disagree with what Srila Prabhupada was saying. I needed to learn more. I also asked my younger brother, Gary, if he knew of any yoga places in St. Louis. Back then, yoga was not popular like it is now. There was no internet, only the yellow pages. But he told me there was something downtown. He gave me the name. And I found the address. And in May 1971, I drove myself over to the Hare Krishna Center on a Thursday night. That was where the devotees were based, headed by His Grace Vamandev Das Adhikari and his good wife, Indira Devi Dasi. So it was a small temple with only a few devotees, and they were about to have Bhagavad Gita class. So there was one brahmachari who gave the class, and I was the only person in the room listening. It was Srila Prabhupada's small purple-colored abridged Bhagavad Gita as it is. I don't remember the verse or the topic, but when I heard it, I realized this is what I have been looking for. After class, somehow a devotee asked me if I would like to stay. And I said yes. I was 18 years old. I'd graduated high school. I was in between jobs. Everything fell into place, just the right time. I joined the temple and I chanted 16 rounds the next morning. Hearing from Srila Prabhupada through his books was a life-changing experience that caused me to take the road less traveled. So I got initiated in August that same year when Prabhupada was in London, and he sent me a letter and my chanting beads by mail. I've lived in and visited ISKCON ashrams around the world, from Detroit, New York City, Dallas, London, Paris, Bombay, New Delhi, and Vrindavan. I was part of Vishnu Jan Swami's Radha Damodar Traveling Roadshow, and then the Vaikuntha Players in Brooklyn Henry Street Temple. I was at the Krishna Balaram Mandir on opening day. Hong Kong and Taiwan temples are the places where I have served in the 70s and 80s. So that's my background.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. I feel like we can have a conversation all day about all the information you've just shared, all places that you've been. And I remember some of those details from our conversation a year and a half ago. Some of it I don't remember. So it's just so good to kind of be reinformed by your background. I mean, you've been around the movement for a long time. And I love that you've got so many stories to share. Thank you for all of that, Shravanaya. You've also been, or you have been, an educator for a long time, in particular educating people about philosophy, yoga, and metaphysics. Love that word, metaphysics.
I'll explain that in a minute.
Yes, yes. Why is that? What is it about these disciplines that you're attracted to?
Well, I was attracted to yoga for no apparent reason. None of my friends were into it at all. But one of my psychedelic experiences on LSD revealed to me that I was an eternal spirit who had been born in many species of life. I realized that reincarnation and transmigration from one body to another is more than a theory. I knew it was true. That began my journey of self-realization. It must have been some unfinished business from past lives. By reading Prabhupada's books, I took up serious study of Vedanta and Bhakti Yoga. Well, over the years, by application of the Vedanta philosophy that I had learned, experience showed me that the teachings were true, because everything I was witnessing began to make sense. I gradually came to understand life on all its levels more and more. Yogi Bhajan, famous saying, he said, if you want to learn something, read about it. If you want to understand something, write about it. And if you want to master something, teach it. Well, I was born in the sign of Sagittarius, so teaching is as natural to me as breathing. During years of work in Hong Kong, beginning in 1990, teaching yoga asanas on the one hand and studying philosophy and occult subjects on the other, in between eating, sleeping, and classes, quite a pile of notes and realizations of mine accumulated. I considered that perhaps some of them may provide insights for other spiritual seekers, those among us who want to understand reality, make sense of this world, maybe have had enough of the tossing and turning here in the ocean of material existence and want to make their way to ultimate peace and happiness. In fact, the fact is, at that time in yoga classes, in workshops, in yoga teacher trainings, the facilitators generally avoided discussing the basic tenets of the inner practice of yoga that aims yama and niyama. This was unfortunate, but the reason was not difficult to understand. The reason that they didn't talk about it was, if you make it fun, you'll get more followers. If you make it restrictive and austere, then you'll lose more followers. But now there appears to have been a shift in attitudes. More people are ready to go vegan or vegetarian. More people are ready to declutter their lives by accumulating less. And naturally, they're following some of these yoga disciplines, just naturally. It's kind of like after winter comes spring. I find it encouraging. Well, communication is what I'm made to do, for better or worse. At the turn of the century, I put together and taught basic Bhagavad Gita for yoga students in a teacher's training course. And in 2004, I took the curriculum and turned it into a book. This is the book.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I never saw this picture anywhere before, but after I published this book, somehow or other, all the Bhagavad Gitas had this on the front cover. I don't know. That's synchronicity, I guess.
You're being followed. You're being followed.
I don't know if that's true or not. But so I took the course that I put together and I turned it into a book. Right? That's how you do it. Later, I conducted courses in Basic Yoga Sutras, the inner practice. This was something that I really wanted to do. It's got I call it the Yama and Niyama. Nope, this one here, Yama Niyama.
Wow.
Yep, and it compares Advaita Vedanta and Bhagavad Vedanta. Shows you what they have in common, but what the big differences are, right? Let's see. I have taught yoga philosophy certification courses on my own in many places. I've taught at the International Yoga Institute and more recently Pure Yoga Institute. Done several yoga teacher training courses in philosophy. So that's what I've been doing.
Great. Thank you for this. And I loved how you showed us some of your books. I have been listening to what you're saying, and I wasn't looking at books behind you and in your cap. It's wonderful. And the fact that you've showed us your books leads us nicely on to the next question. Is that you have been a writer for many years. Please, can you tell us a bit about your books? What inspires you to write them? And in particular, please tell us about your latest book, halfway through the forest.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Srila Prabhupada encouraged his disciples to write. In a lecture that he gave in 1972, Prabhupada said, realization means you should write. Every one of you. What is your realization? This is for Back to Godhead magazine, right? You write your realization, what you realized about Krishna, and that is required. It's not passive. Always you should be active. Whenever you find time, you write. Never mind, 2 lines, 4 lines, but you write your realization. That's what he said. Now, what I have experienced is that I don't understand what I realized until I begin to try to write it down. And then when I write it down, it's like I'm seeing it for the first time. And I'm starting to understand it. Oh, yeah. So it's really important to get it out of your head and on the paper. And then you really get it. So I encourage everybody to write a little something about their bhakti experiences. Well, so about my books, my other books include Karma and Reincarnation, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. All right. A lot of people think maybe karma is true, but I don't know. And they don't want to know because the bottom line is what? You're getting what you deserve. That's a hard one to take. All right. People don't want to think that, but that's what it is. So I not only did it in English, but I have had it translated into Chinese.
Wow.
It's really big over here. A lot of people buy this one over here. This. So
That's great.
yeah. Then I did another one, Alchemy, Gemstones, the Planets and You. Alchemy, Gemstones, the Planets and You. All right. This was something that many New Age people find interesting. It covers the vibrational qualities as well as healing effects of different gemstones. Right?
Can you just remind me what alchemy means? What it's
Alchemy means to change something from one form to another. Okay. Just like here, touchstone changes lead into gold. That's alchemy. So Prabhupada is the transcendental alchemist. So he turns jug eyes and mud eyes into Brahmins. Yeah. That's what he does. You know, he's an alchemist. And we're the alchemist apprentices. Yes, that's what we are.
I love that. Yeah.
Let's see, what else we got? In all my books, even this one here, you know, I have many references to Prabhupada's teachings. Lots of quotations and things like that. So I weave it together to kind of get them to wonder, well, who is this Bhaktivedanta Swami? What, Bhagavad Gita? Can I get a copy? You know, that's what my goal is, really. I also wrote a small book on for Vaishnava devotees entitled Blessings and Lessons. Okay, this one here.
Great. Wonderful.
It's a really small book, but it's what is this about? It helps devotees understand and survive anartha nivritti, the purification phase of the bhakti process. It's tough. It doesn't come easy or automatically. One has to work at it. And so I give some references in here. This one is in English and also Spanish. And these are available on Amazon. So I wanted to mention about my husband, Dhananjay Sri Krishna Kulkarni. He's the genius behind the graphic design and independent publishing. He's also does my online website and my Spotify channel with all my audios on it. We've been together for 21 years, and I couldn't do any of this without him. He's my angel. Now, when we lived in Texas around 2008, I taught a few tarot reading workshops to some of the local ladies there. And I developed a systematic curriculum. And I also used images of the tarot cards in slide presentations for Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Sutras. Hey, the reason why I do this is that these images actually illustrate different faith and advancement and self-realization. So when I did an interview with some female devotees, they really urged me to write a book about it. So I finally did. And like all my other books, it's full of Gita verses and references from Srila Prabhupada's teachings. So that's this. Very interesting. Yoga and tarot. They really, really go together, right? So we have the pictures of the cards in here. Now look, padam padam yadi padam natesham. He's ready to walk off the cliff and he doesn't even know it. He's so optimistic and, you know, bright. And then you see the little doggy right behind his foot. See the dog? That's his mind. He's got his baggage is his karma, right? He's got his baggage. This all makes a lot of sense, you know? So I can really tie it together. This book, you want to know a little bit about it?
Yes, please. This is your latest, most recent book, isn't it? I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I talk about tarot as a tool for self-realization. And I go over the archetypes, the major cards, the major arcana. I talk about 4 levels of human experience. So the air, water, earth, fire. This is the 4 levels that we humans experience things on. And I explain that in here. I also cover numerology and the numbered cards. So it's really an introduction, what this is. Elementary astrology is covered in here. Spirits and the Great Spirit. And ethics of reading for others. And I give a ritual for beginning the reading so that you ask guidance, you know, the Great Spirit for help. The Great Spirit, of course, is Krishna, Paramatma. And how to phrase the question and how to do spreads. There's a bunch of spreads in here also. So this gets a beginner started, really. I wanted to let your listeners know that these books are available for individuals on Amazon. But if a temple wanted to buy some stock of books for distribution, I've got a deal for them. If they pay for the printing and the shipping, you know, that's wholesale cost, then I'll arrange for that for them. And they can sell at retail price and keep all the profit for the temple.
That's very generous of you.
No, be real generous would be if I just gave it for free.
Yeah.
You know, people, they regard something better when they pay for it. If they get it for free, then they think it's worthless. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's that transactional relationship, isn't it? If you've paid for something, even if it's just a donation, you value it more, you appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ironically, I was once told that at Harry Festival places back 10 years ago. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing the details of the books with us.
I have one more. Yeah, yeah. Here's one more. Okay, I used to write scripts for the players in New York. We did acting. We dramatized these narrations from Srimad Bhagavatam. So I put together some of my favorite narrations in here, and I made the stories very dramatic, you know, just to make it easier for the listener to visualize. Okay, and we did a lot of stuff. It's a really pretty book.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's called Bhagavad Shikshamala, a garland of sacred stories from the Bhagavad Purana. Bhagavad Shikshamala. You can get it on Amazon. Yep.
Can I just ask a kind of side question? Before Prabhupada gave that instruction about encouraging his disciples to write, before that, did you have this zest for knowledge and education and information, or is it kind of really since that instruction that Prabhupada gave?
Did I have
This you're an educator. You love to read, you love to write, and you're really passionate about it. I can really feel that. Have you always been like that? Or was it since Prabhupada gave that instruction that he would really like his disciples to write?
Well, I have always been curious about things, and I always learned so much by reading. Okay. And I was interested in things that were not in school. So I would read things that were not in school. And I was always doing that. But I didn't know that I was good at writing until I started getting involved in it. And then I understood that, oh, I can do this. And I've done blogs, online blog, and things like that. I can do that. And I can make keynote presentations with illustrations. And so I can do a lot of things. But I wrote down so that I could understand things better. And I didn't always write thinking that I was going to publish books. I didn't really think that. I just wanted to understand what it is I was learning. And then I put it all together. So, people wanted to learn about yoga, inner practice. Yeah, I understand about that. And then the ladies in Texas, they asked me if I could teach them tarot. It's funny. People come up and say, "Can you teach me?" No. Okay.
And that actually leads us nicely on to the next question about tarot. You've told me in the past, you've told us on this podcast as well today, that you have this huge interest in tarot. But can you please tell the viewers and listeners at home, what is tarot and why do you practice it?
Well, tarot is illustrated cards, right? But these illustrated cards are basically something that helps in divination or understanding the future, understanding the present, goes beyond what you perceive, right? Tarot is the fastest, most accurate method I have ever seen of gaining a view of the broader picture of a situation. Because a lot of times when we are dealing with a situation, all of our feelings and worries are in the front here, and we can't really see objectively the situation. So tarot helps in this regard. By achieving perspective in this way, one can make informed decisions. For example, one may ask, what will happen if I move to such and such place? The outcome is depicted in a tarot spread. And all of this is in my book, which is concise and can get a beginner started. But, okay, hold on to your seat. Here is one explanation of how tarot works from a book called The Doctrine of Kabbalism, written by Elbert Benjamin, also known as C.C. Zane. Okay, very, very famous. I've read many, many of his books. He wrote this in 1936. He said, on the inner plane, consciousness can be extended unhindered by physical distance and extended backwards and forwards in physical time. All right, so the outer plane is physical what we're experiencing, but the inner plane is invisible. All right, I'll get more to that in a minute. He goes on, the tarot cards, through their universal symbols, are designed, among other things, to assist in extending the inner plane consciousness and focusing it on information desired. In other words, you can focus on something and find out on the inner plane. They are the most effective means known of forming the associations that enable what was perceived through extrasensory perception to be recognized by objective consciousness. Extrasensory perception, that means you know something somehow on the invisible level that you didn't get any message on a physical level about, all right? ESP, have you heard of that? Extrasensory perception. All right, he goes on. The unconscious mind uses the power of psychokinetic effect. So from the mind to the physical cards, psychokinetic effect, to cause the tarot cards in a spread to become so placed as to reveal information obtained through extrasensory perception. That's what he said. Do you get it? Yeah. All right. Now, physical means gross material manifestation. Metaphysical means subtle or invisible material manifestation. Not everything invisible is spiritual. This is a mistake. A lot of people think that if it's invisible, it's spiritual. No, no, no. There's a lot of material manifestation on the invisible inner plane. On the inner plane, metaphysical phenomena is described most clearly in classical Vedic literature from ancient India. According to these scriptures, the invisible world is not chaotic, but is actually highly organized and follows natural law, just as we observe in the physical world. Controlling his own mind, a dedicated yogi can attain powers called siddhis or perfections. Lord Shri Krishna explains in Uddhava 10 second mystic perfections arising from the modes of nature. Now, I found this in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 15. And Krishna is saying that among the 10 secondary mystic perfections, there is hearing and seeing things far away. Durasravana darshanam. Now, you remember that Sanjaya did that? Sanjaya was sitting with Dhritarashtra in the palace, and he, with Durasravana darshana, he could hear and see Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, and he narrated what they were saying and doing. Remember that? That's how we got Bhagavad Gita. Durasravana darshana. Right? So that's one of the mystic perfections. And Sanjay got that from Vyasadeva. That was his teacher. So, in other words, extrasensory perception. Now, Krishna said more to Uddhava. He said that among these perfections, the power to know past, present, and future. And how to know the minds of others. Knowing the minds of others. So these are abilities that one can have. And tarot facilitates some of these facilities. As why I began reading tarot, it was from dire necessity. I found myself in the Far East in a foreign country, 1980s, and by 1990, I was on my own in Hong Kong. No relatives, no close friends, just teaching yoga to students. Someone invited me for a tarot card meeting. She was a novice who lived in my neighborhood. And when she pulled out the deck, she had a book in which to find the meaning of the card in any particular position. So she had cards, and then she had a book that she was reading from. Now, I believed in astrology because it's based on numbers, which don't lie. But I did not believe in tarot at first. It seemed kind of airy-fairy. But when she read the cards, she was specifically delineating my current position without my having told her anything previously, and all in great detail. So when I asked how she knew all this, she just said, "It's in the book." I got my own copy of that book and cards, and I began learning from then on. I did at least one reading for myself every day. It kept my head screwed on straight, and it kept my business going for 30 years. Besides yoga teaching, I have done readings and counseling for clients from many different countries over the years, and nearly all of whom found it very helpful.
Thank you for that. Do you find kind of an additional question? Have you ever found amongst the devotee community or the Hare Krishna community, there's this pushback or this resistance to tarot or other kind of practices that are seen as part of the occult?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't advertise myself doing this except on your podcast here. But it's not something that and yet devotees ask me for readings. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know other devotees, Krishna devotees who have an interest in these types of practices, particularly tarot card reading, palmistry. And I think I've produced at least two other podcasts before on similar issues to this. One was with a devotee who could see spirits and ghosts, and we had a fascinating conversation. That was about 2 years ago. And another was a woman, and we talked. She's also a devotee, and we talked about something. I can't remember the exact discipline that she followed, but it was something similar. And I've always had this kind of side interest in things like this, more just because it's different and it's fascinating, you know. And my degree 20 years ago at university was in the study of religions, but I spent most of my time studying alternative spirituality, you know, and different spiritual methods, and I've always been kind of fascinated with that. But I think my question was really rooted in the fact that, particularly amongst Western devotees, you know, I was raised a Methodist Christian, kind of liberal Christian, where the Bible talks about staying away from these types of things, and you know, because it's not of God. You know, I think there's a reference in Leviticus or Deuteronomy around, you know, staying away from things like this. So I always love to meet devotees who have interests in these particular things. And you know, tarot card reading, I just find fascinating. I've never had my cards read. I think that's the expression. I've never had that done. What they would say. But I do find it fascinating, and I love how you're so confident about speaking about it. Sorry. I think that's really encouraging.
It works. It helps.
Yeah.
And but the thing is that the novice has to know the difference between different levels of spirits and not get involved with lower spirits. They have to go for the high ones. And so chanting your rounds will keep you in the pure state. So yeah. Recognize the lower one. I've done a you can find it on my Spotify channel, where it's called Spirits in the Material World. And I talk about different grades of spirits there, which is helpful. Yeah.
And in a minute, I'll get on to the next question, because you've kindly very nicely linked us to it, I think. But just to mention that, because you've kind of encouraged me to mention it. So we have produced the podcast here about black magic in the past here at the Hare Krishna Project, and I wasn't going to give my own plug of my own books.
Go ahead.
Black Magic Booze and Bhakti, which is now out, and as you can imagine, causing a stir.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Which is and
well, the only thing worse than not being talked about The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Yes, yeah, and there's a reason for me saying this. What was it? You just said something. That was it. It was about different levels of spirits. And before I published the first podcast about black magic a year and a half ago, I had to. I was given some advice by some devotees that I needed to be all prayed up. As the Christians would say, I needed to, if I'm starting to speak out against black magic and talk about black magic, I also need to be aware of what it is. And so my rounds have always been important, but I do my 16 rounds. I try and listen to Prabhupada more. I listen to Prabhupada chanting more. I try to be more focused on Prabhupada. So I'm all prayed up because, there will be some people that are not happy that I'm talking about black magic, writing about it, particularly with this links with the Hare Krishna movement. But thank the Lord, I have been fine over the last year and a half, and thankfully nothing has happened to me that I'm aware of. That I'm aware of anyway. I'm still standing and still smiling. I could talk about this all day. I'm fascinated with this whole subject. But you have very nicely mentioned your own podcast, which is a new thing since we spoke last year and a half ago. So you've recently launched your Barefoot Philosophy podcast series on Spotify. Can you tell us a bit about the talks that you've given and what inspired you to set up the podcast?
Okay. Well, it's Barefoot Philosopher, all right? Most of the talks are about Srimad Bhagavatam. A few were for a general audience, such as astrology and karma, or spirits in the material world. But Dhananjaya encouraged me to take all my recorded lectures from the last several years and get them on this platform. As of now, we have 144 different podcasts available for listening, free online. Many of them are in English, along with other language translations, because I receive invitations from around the world to give class online. So some are in Portuguese and English, some are in Spanish and English, a lot of them are in Cantonese and English, because that's the language they speak here in Hong Kong. And I give Srimad Bhagavatam class twice a month at ISKCON Hong Kong. Here's a comment I received from one of my listeners. So he said, Haribol concluded the class. Your research in finding important details from various scriptural sources is a key reason why your discussions are so substantive. When one reads a sloka to lecture on with no preparation, just opening to the page and speaking, it may be a good talk, but cannot compare to a well thought out and highly organized effort as you present every time. That was really nice of him to write that. I try my best. So, I would really love to invite your listeners to go to my Spotify channel, Barefoot Philosopher. And there's so many different kinds of subject matters. Just scroll down and whatever catches your eye and interests you, just listen. And if you like it, share it with one of your friends. Okay? Because Lord Chaitanya said, Jari Deko Tare Goho Krishna Upadesh. Yeah, that's what this is about. All of them are about Krishna. And all you got to do is copy, paste, and send. All right? So you'll be sharing. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Thank you for that, Shravania. I'm going to put a link to your podcast with this podcast and also a link with your Amazon pages as well. Sorry, I made a mistake. I said Barefoot Philosophy. It's Barefoot Philosopher. So I will make sure that's correct. But yeah, and I have to say, I love how organized you are, and I think you're a fantastic speaker. it doesn't surprise me that there's 140 or something episodes on the podcast, because you're so organized and so enthusiastic about speaking and writing and presenting. And I don't want to embarrass Shravania, but I think she's only the second person ever to send me the answers in advance to the podcast, which is fantastic. I loved receiving your answers yesterday. It's wonderful. It was wonderful to read through what.
I asked the higher self, should I send these? And he said yes.
Yes, it is great. It just, because there's often a joke about the Hare Krishna movement that we're not an organized religion. There's a pun there. We're not an organized religion. I would say devotees are the most disorganized people I've ever met in my life. I worked in so many fields of things, but Shravania is incredibly organized, and I really, really appreciate that. So I can tell that her Spotify channel will also be super organized as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And make sure that you listen. Okay. Shravania, what are your thoughts on we're kind of changing kind of direction of conversation now? What are your thoughts on the current condition? Sounds like a medical thing, doesn't it? What are your thoughts on the current condition of the present day Hare Krishna movement?
All right. Well, here's a quote from Eric Hoffer. He was an American philosopher, social critic, and he used to load the ships on the docks. All right. So he was a blue collar worker. But he made an observation I find so right on. Every great cause begins as a movement, becomes a business, and eventually degenerates into a racket. That's what he said. All right. So I couldn't disagree with him. In Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, if there are two people, there will be arguments. If there are three, politics. That's the energetic influence of the time in which we find ourselves. An ocean of faults. Yep. So reminds me of that verse. Kalir dosha nidhe rajan osti ek mahan guna kitana deva krishnasya mukta sangha param vraje. My dear king, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become free from material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, after mentioning the innumerable faults of this age of Kali, Shukadeva Goswami now mentions its one brilliant aspect. Just as one powerful king can kill innumerable thieves, one brilliant spiritual quality can destroy all the contamination of this age. It is impossible to overestimate the importance of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, especially in this fallen age. Okay, now Lord Chaitanya has given us a method of God realization that does not require a church or a temple. It doesn't need a priest or require expensive paraphernalia for fire sacrifices. The sacrifice is your breath, which is your life. Giving one's life to the Supreme is referred to in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali as Ishvar Pranidhan. It is the actual goal of yoga. And you can do it yourself, chanting either alone as japa or with a group as kirtan. That's it. All right? In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna affirms, of sacrifices I am the chanting of the holy names. So chanting japa by yourself is the topmost sacrifice. Do it with others, it's kirtan. Topmost sacrifice. All right? So that's the primary thing that we should be concerned with. Right? Now here's an excerpt that I found from a book, Jamuna Devi, A Life of Unalloyed Devotion. A little background about this. While she was in India assisting with the construction of the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan, she had a lot of trouble dealing with the Indian male devotees. She had been sent by Prabhupada to help manage and organize but her advice was being disregarded due to her having a female body. Sound familiar? Later, she took time out in the U.S. with Dina Tarini Devi and finally decided not to go back to India. And they made their own center and carried on with their sadhana. In conversation with Srila Prabhupada in June 1975, Jamuna said, "We have been told that because we don't have the association of devotees, we cannot make any advancement." Srila Prabhupada said, "Association can be 2 or 200, but you must be compatible. If you are 2 and compatible, you can go back to Godhead. But if you are 200 and not compatible," he opened his eyes wide, "then no one will make any advance." Then Jamuna said, "But Prabhupada, some of the leaders are saying that we have lost from because we left ISKCON. And without your mercy, there's no alive." Prabhupada, ISKCON is you are chanting the holy names of Krishna. That is ISKCON. Couldn't be more clear. Yep. ISKCON is where you're chanting the holy names of Krishna. Better to avoid taking sides in the unnecessary schisms in the movement and focus on practicing your sadhana. You can't fix other people, but you can adapt how you respond to situations. And doing it the way Srila Prabhupada advised is best. So focus on your sadhana.
Thank you for that. And you actually reminded me of something of Gauranga Sundar, and he runs the Hare Krishna Center in Leicester. And he often listens to them wherever the home is on is wherever the home is. So I think it's a great commitment by result. And how that we're all wherever we are, as we are, I meet so many for so many reasons that don't sort to the part of the battle. I mean, that's the big one. I don't feel that it's serious. But I think back when just leaves in front of us. The whistlers and right up that holy names on being chanted. So thank you for that. And finally, I love how concise this conversation is today. It's one. Can you tell us? Not tell us. Can you give us some thoughts or some ideas on how we can attract more Western people to the path?
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that rejecting the misogynistic culture of emphasis on varnashram would be helpful. My personal experience is that in Kali Yuga, varnashram doesn't work. No, not everyone will agree with me when I say it, but the Krishna consciousness movement is not about spreading varnashram dharma. Srila Prabhupada wrote in the Teachings of Lord Kapila in chapter 1, the purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement is to inform everyone that no one is superior to Krishna, God. Because many young Americans and Europeans are fortunate and know nothing of any hodgepodge demigod, they have taken this bona fide Krishna consciousness movement seriously. Hodgepodge, yeah, that's Hinduism. Any god will do. Worship any god you like. What's your favorite? Oh yeah, go ahead and worship him. But we're all going to merge into the light. We're just going to merge into, give me a break. You know, this is just, doesn't make any sense. The Prabhupada's philosophy that he's handing us through the Sampradaya makes so much sense. You just take the time to understand it, right? Here's another quote that he gave. The main purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to enlighten the forgetful living entity and remind him of its original Krishna consciousness. Here's another one. Humanity must be trained to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. That is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. There can be no happiness in changing one's material conditions, for everywhere there is trouble and misery. So, you know, I think, do you get what I'm saying about this? Yeah. What do you think about Varnashram?
You're causing me. You're wanting me to come off of the fence. It's an interesting one because it's one of the topics that devotees. Interestingly, it's one of the topics that devotees want to talk to me about the most, and they want to, and they want to be a guest on the podcast to talk about Varnashram or their new Varnashram project. In fact, the guests for episode 169 talked a lot about Varnashram. It was last week, and
they can talk about it if they want, but it doesn't work. You know, people try to do it and it doesn't work.
I always like to remain neutral, but I'm going to come off on the fence. I personally am not attracted to the modern. I'm not attracted to this idea that we go and live in countryside, and there's some kind of system. I like the fact that you can live in cities and towns. The reason why we are preaching is to attract more people, Western people, to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said, just add Krishna to your life. You don't necessarily have to give things up. Of course, there's things we shouldn't be doing, but just add Krishna to your life. The key fundamental thing of this movement is not about encouraging people to go and live in rural communities to grow their own food. As idyllic as that may be for some people, it doesn't work, and it doesn't attract me either.
Yeah, me neither. Here's another quote from that stood out to me from a lecture Prabhupada gave in Calcutta in 1972. Prabhupada said, temple means spiritual education shelter. Spiritual educational shelter. People should come. They should learn what is spiritual life. What is God? What is my relationship with him? That is temple. The ceremonies, and now this is my take. Ceremonies and the festivals held in the temple are fine, but if people are not taught the essential teachings, and it's merely a circus or a party type of the atmosphere where they hang out and chat until it's time for the feast. To educate people, we need to address issues that interest and concern them. And we need to speak to them in their own language so that they can understand the concepts. Not about getting them to convert to wear dhoti, kurtas, and saris. They should be encouraged to stay in their but learn by regular attendance how to dedicate all their work to Krishna and always some devotees to mentor and communicate instantly with them and on WhatsApp, On the other hand, getting someone to renounce everything and move into the temple and then piling a ton of service on him is a pretty good way to get him to burn out fast. So I'll end with an excerpt from a lecture Prabhupada gave in Detroit in 1976. Pure devotion means anyavilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavrtam. Only concentration of Krishna. Krishna is the root. Krishna is Vasudeva Sarvamiti. One who knows this, and this knowledge is not so easy. Bahunam jamanam ante. After many, many births cultivating knowledge, if one is fortunate, he can understand that Krishna is the root of everything. But that is the ultimate goal. So, if we understand this central point, that Krishna is the root of everything, then we are successful in life.
Thank you for that. That was a fantastic note to end on, and a fantastic reminder, actually, of what the essence of the Krishna consciousness movement is about. Krishna says, you know, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, you know, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Just surrender unto me. Krishna actually makes it sound so simple, doesn't he? Just surrender unto me, and give up all this nonsense.
Yeah, depending on Krishna means that you understand that he is in control of the outcomes. You know, do your work, but offer it up to him, and whatever his plan is, you're with it. That's depending on Krishna. Doesn't mean you sit back and go, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. No, you do your work. You get busy. You do what you do, but the outcome and the result, Krishna is in control. Hand it to him. You're in control. I'm not in control. I'm not going to tell you how to do this. No. You know what I need and want. You don't even...
I know in the Gaudiya Vaishnav Hare Krishna community, we don't use the word faith a lot. The Christians use that word much more, but we just need to have more faith in the spiritual process, in the chanting, in Krishna, and just to, you know, yes, of course, do what we need to do, and do our dharma, do our duty, share Krishna consciousness with others. Try to put Krishna first, but also have faith in Krishna, have complete faith in Krishna. And I think we all need to be reminded of that. Okay. It's been a fantastic conversation today. Nice and concise. I mean that in a positive way, actually. It's been a wonderful conversation, and it's been great to have Shravaniya back a year and a half later on the Hare Krishna Project podcast, on episode 170. I still can't quite believe that we've made it this far, and we're still going. There's still guests to invite, and also there are still a huge range of topics we've never discussed here.
Well, keep it up, Narada. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. And because sometimes I feel like it's just me, my next door neighbor, and my mom that watches this. I mean, my mom doesn't watch it. But and then all of a sudden somebody will contact me and say, I've seen these episodes, or I've seen this podcast, or, you know, I really appreciate that this guest talked about this issue. And so I appreciate what you've just said, and I appreciate that people do watch this podcast, because we want to give people a voice.
Shravanam Kirtanam. This is what you're doing.
Jai. So, okay, I'm gonna say goodbye to the viewers and listeners at home, or wherever they're listening to this podcast. It doesn't have to be at home, or wherever. And if Shravaniya just stays on the line, it's like a talk show, isn't it? Stay on the line, and we'll talk to you after. So I'm hugely grateful to Shravaniya for returning to the Hare Krishna Project podcast this week, to talk about lots of fascinating things, particularly tarot, and tarot card reading, which is just to some extent is a very taboo subject. So I admire her bravery, enthusiasm, commitment to talking about it. And I appreciate her giving up her time as well. I know she's very busy. I do follow all of her antics on social media. And it's also an honor for us to have a Prabhupada disciple on the show as well. It certainly adds, I think, a lot of weight to what we're doing. So a big thank you to Shravaniya for being our guest this week. Just a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, which is the other platform you can watch this podcast, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. Now, every time I say that, the number of likes and followers and subscribers does increase. So it shows that you do watch to the end of the podcast and you are listening to what I'm saying, which is fantastic. I really appreciate that. Okay, so until next week, I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.